Hey, turn the camera on. Turn the camera on. All right, so I'm done. I'm getting up to walk out for the day. My producer, Ryan, decides to get into it with me. He decides to ask me who the 4 greatest heels in the history of professional wrestling is. Now, he only asked me this so that he could tell me his 4. And he knew it would make me mad. And it did. So I'm going to go first, all right? I do not need a moment to think about that. The greatest heel in the history of professional wrestling is Vincent K McMahon. Now, this question does stem from the recent departure of Hulk Hogan, who was such a great heel, where Hollywood was it was so incredible. Fight Oracle put out a piece, and he titled it, "The Greatest Walkout in the History of Walkouts of Any Walkout," meaning any sport ever, and then he played it, and it was really something. But I just want you to know where this stems from. Vincent K McMahon is the greatest heel in history, okay? The second greatest heel is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Now is where you can start to have a little bit of a discussion. And I will admit that there's some opinion here. I went with Rick Rude. I went with Ravishing Rick Rude. And in number 4, and this one was a bit of a surprise, I admit, but I'd like to make my argument. I went with the Big Boss Man. And the Big Boss Man and Paul Orndorff, and frankly, you guys remember Yokozuna? And there was a guy called Earthquake, by the way. But I mean, those guys, they really came off as jerks, which is what a heel needs to do. But I went with the Big Boss Man. The Big Boss Man was to be trusted. He was law enforcement. And as much as you guys think it's in fashion today to not like the police, those words were never spoken until 4 years ago, just so you understand. Everybody loved the police. They would tell you in school, if you're ever in a bad situation, tell your parent, tell a teacher, or tell the police. They would tell you this. You were trained to know that they were the good guys. And the Big Boss Man was one of them, and he went bad. He would use his handcuffs to hook his opponent to the top rope, and then he would take out the billy club. And he'd do a whole presentation with the billy club, and then he'd start putting the club to him after he already beat him. That was so counterculture at the time that kids are being told on a regular basis that these are the good guys. This was a cop that went bad. I mean, this was scary. This was frightening stuff, and I'm going to go with him. Now, Ryan comes in and tells me his, and he threw out more of suggestions. He threw out Eddie Guerrero. He said, well, hey, what about Curt Henning? He said, how are you not putting Curt Henning on there? He said, how are you not putting the Hulkster on the list? And I feel I can answer that very simply. To be a heel is not something that you get to come out and identify. And they do try to identify it. Right? But it's not something that you get to identify. You don't get to say, I'm the heel. Make a angry face while the other guy is doing a little jingle in there so the audience all knows who good and bad is. Like, it doesn't work that way. And Fight Oracle's posting of Hollywood Hogan making that walk is proof of that. It threw him off. The Hulkster went white and black. He took off the red and yellow. He walks out. It's the greatest reception. All the signs say Hogan. Stone Cold got the same thing. If you want to talk about heels, Stone Cold was the ultimate heel. He's the one that came off and gave you the Nate Diaz. He's the one comes out, he's drinking beer on a kid's show. He's coming out and he's using what at that time was profanity. But he doesn't make the list. Why? Because he wasn't a heel. He wanted to be. He tried to be. He did everything to identify as a heel. You loved him. So he's excluded from the list. The Rock, one of the great performers ever, who, by the way, went heel for a while, is excluded from the list. As a matter of fact, there is nothing more monetizable in sports and entertainment, it includes UFC, than a cool heel. The Rock, Hogan, Austin. There's nothing better. So they don't get to go into the category of heel. I then had Eddie Guerrero thrown in there. Now, rest in peace. But I felt he was put in there, much like Henning, out of respect because we lost him, as kind of like an artist that gets more famous post-mortem. There is nobody whose natural body weight is 170 pounds or under that makes a top 4 professional wrestling list, no matter what the list. Just so you know. Nobody. And you can say he was 200 pounds, he's all yoked out of his mind. Excuse me. There is nobody whose natural body weight is 170 or under, which Eddie at 5'9" was. Eddie juiced out of his mind, 200, that makes a top 4 list ever. And Henning did a very good job. But Henning, and he was a great worker. He's not as great as you guys say. He was a great worker. He's not as great as you guys say. He does not go in the category of Bret Hart, of Shawn Michaels, of Seth Rollins. But he was smooth. He was a second-generation guy. He was smooth, and he hit the perfect plex, and it was a little bit annoying. But Henning largely had the same problem being a heel that Drickus has being a heel, which is he was handsome. Drickus can get away with murder. And you guys don't even understand he's doing it. The things that he said to Sean Strickland that prompted a street fight with Sean Strickland, where the police had to get involved. You guys all acted like that was Sean's fault. Because Drickus, he comes off in a certain way. And Henning did too. Henning had the long hair. He had the great teeth. He had a great body. He had the right tan. He was big, but not too big. And I'm just sharing with you, I don't think that he goes into that category of heel, and I don't think that a wrestler gets to identify as a heel. He can try, but then you, the audience, either accept it or not. Austin was not a heel. He was the most popular guy in the business. The Rock was not a heel. He was the greatest draw in the business. Hogan wanted you to hate him. He grabbed the microphone in this clip. Go to Fight Oracle and check this out. He grabs the microphone in the clip, and he is genuinely confused. His whole script and everything he has planned is out the window. Because he thought they were going to be booing, but they didn't. They bought his t-shirts and they held up his signs. And I'm going to stand by my argument. Vince is the greatest of all time. I don't know that there's a debate. And I think when you hear me say that you'll agree. And the only reason that you didn't put that number 1 on your list is you didn't consider Vince. You didn't think of him as a wrestler. But now that you hear it, Vince, I follow that with Ted DiBiase, and I don't think there's a close second. I think there's a meaningful gap, but I am then going to go with Rude, and I am going to go with the big boss man. What is yours?